Alright, let me clarify firstly that this isn't meant to be a totally cynical rant or something like that. This is me just stating something that I've been noticing more in, complaining about it and showing my concern towards it, as well as genuinely wanting to know what other people think if they've also been noticing this. Also, I'm not going to be showing any charts that I'm criticizing or anything like that. I'm just going to show random charts that I like, ones that I've made, and a few occasions where I'll show a chart that I'm specifically talking about. But otherwise, I don't want to highlight that to not feel like I'm specifically going after certain things to attack. That being said, I felt like more than ever, something that's been getting worse and worse is that iceberg charts, as well as the videos covering them, have been as low quality as they've been. And I'm sure there's some good ones still being made, but whenever I see a video for an iceberg chart, I just don't feel like watching it anymore, because not only might it just not be a topic that I'm interested in, but also because, I just have lost my, esteem and interest in it. And I feel like the reason why is that I've just been wired to have the expectation that it's not going to be that good anymore. And, I see that too with just, random charts that I happen to come across where they're just simply not that good. And my problems with them is that they'll have entries that are now, well, first of all, they'll not only have not that many entries a lot of the time, but even if they do have a lot of it is super, super basic stuff and not arranged in any particular way. And it's all very general knowledge stuff that, you would think anybody would know for the topic that's going over. It's the type of mindset from those who still think that, nobody remembers Robot Jones or Kitty Bobo or something like that, as if they're still super obscure things. And yeah, that's just become my biggest issue with them recently, is with the charts themselves, they just become super, super basic and underwhelming. And then the videos that cover them also have their own issues on top of that, as well as others. First of all, they'll go over icebergs like that, and they won't even do a really good job explaining each entry. It could be salvage if they were explained better, but a lot of charts I see have very, very brief and surface level explanations for each entry. Or they'll skip a bunch, or they'll just make a video that possibly doesn't even go over a real iceberg chart, and it's just kind of titling the video as an iceberg, but it's just in reality just listing a bunch of random trivia for said topic. And yeah, I feel like all of that has just made me totally lose my esteem and wanting to watch these anymore. And this is a problem that isn't new, it's always kind of been there, it's just that I feel like it's become a lot more increasingly relevant now. And to give an example of earlier on, I won't say their name, but you could probably easily find it, and I feel like this is what started becoming a bigger issue, is that stuff like this, when I was doing my identity iceberg chart, there was somebody else who was covering it as I was also covering it myself, and I was like, oh, okay, that's fucking awesome, cool, and I watched their videos, and I'll just say it blunt, they fucking sucked. Just a bunch of stuff being skipped over, and entries of explanations are completely wrong. And I watched their other videos and they had these same issues. And while I don't think that, iceberg chart videos being made now necessarily have those problems, you can see where it sprouts out of just stuff being skipped or super surface level stuff, and maybe stuff that isn't as wrongly explained, but, close to it. And unfortunately with that channel too, is that it, for whatever reason, has the most views of any sort of iceberg chart topics you see for whatever series they're covering. And I don't know, it just fucking reminds me of the Phantom Strider and Mr. Enter cartoon ship being the most popular, even though it's, them. And that's a shame, because I feel like that eventually just led to where they are now, where it's you just see the really, really underwhelming stuff outweighing the actually good stuff. And that's kind of why it's made it really hard for me to find anything good. I mean, if there are ones being out there made, I hope so, and Yeah, like that. And I feel like the biggest issue too is that I've talked about this before, and I explained this in my video about making the actual charts. And I mean, there's stuff that I've changed my mind on, or I'm looser on, and yeah, since I've made that. But the one thing that I talk about that I haven't changed on at all is that what really matters when making these is the genuine passion and integrity, and that's what really salvages it. And I feel like all of these have had a lack of it. That being said, I'll give an example of a new chart and a video based on it that has these issues. However, I can tell that whoever made it did genuinely care about the series they're talking about, and that's a Pikmin Iceberg chart video I just recently seen, and it was overall good because of that reason. I can tell that they actually cared about it and that they were really trying, and they got a lot of people in the community to do it, and yeah, it was a really good high effort video. However, that being said, it still had issues in both the charts and the video itself, and I'm not talking about those like behind their back. I did comment on this in the video, and they responded to me in that stuff too, where I was like, hey, this is really good, but here are my issues, and yeah, so this is a respectful criticism just because I generally want to see the best in it. But it had the issues of like entries that were way at the bottom that really should have been at the top of it, and stuff that was briefly explained over, and said entries that were at the bottom that felt like they were more surface level maybe again could have been salvaged and given like deeper meanings if there was more time taken to explain it. I mean, it's already a long video, but I still feel like the entries could have gone by less quickly. And another issue that I've noticed in icebergs in the past that again I feel like has become a bigger problem is that the very top of the layer. Now, I know that the top layer is not meant to be like obscure stuff too much, obviously. However, it's still supposed to be like actual trivia and stuff. Like, for example, I'll just use the Mario 64 as my go-to example for this because everybody knows that. But the top layer had like L's real and half A presses and stuff like that. It wasn't duh like Mario's in the game. Duh, it was released in 1996. The Pikmin chart had stuff at the very top that was just like Olimar, Louis, and like, yes, it's the top layer, but it's not meant to be that basic. It's just a waste of space if you do that. And I did complain about that too, and they explained to me that the reason for that was to get people like both like refamiliarized and reminded stuff for Pikmin so they could prepare for the layer entries, as well as to educate people who aren't familiar with the series on itself. And it's like, okay, well, first of all, if you're watching iceberg charts of something that you know literally nothing about or never even heard of, then what are you doing? You have a lot of time that's completely empty on your hands, and you must be really bored too. And it's not the first time I've heard people doing that, though. But anyways, for the former, I respond with, yeah, that's a good point, and like I can't see where that's generally helpful. However, that gives the implication that the iceberg chart wasn't made for the sake of the chart existing, but was made just specifically and only to be a video, and that's something that I personally more so don't think that should be an issue. This is probably more something that's more subjective, but I feel like people should make the chart first for the sake of just being the chart to exist, and then some video can be done on it later. But I don't know, I just feel like that gives it more of like a genuine like joy and integrity to do, and maybe hear me using those words a lot. And yeah, like, again, though, this existed in the past as a problem, too. Like, for example, I don't remember the name of the person who did this video, and even if I did, I won't say it just so it doesn't feel like I'm, like, bullying and singling them out and all that crap, and I don't even know if the video is still up. It's possible it could have taken down off shame, but it was a SpongeBob iceberg chart video, and it was an issue where both the charts and the video were really bad. Like, the chart had that issue I was just talking about where the top layer was like the movie, and it's like you don't go that basic at the very top. It's just a waste of a layer. And like, I did see somebody, and to be fair, in the defense of that video, he was like, I don't know why this is on here. And I did see somebody in the comments that's like, no, that's the point of the chart. It's like, no, it's not. But everything else, though, was an issue, that one praise aside, where, and people complain about this in the video, is that over half of the entries in that video, the person going over it was just like, I don't know what this means, and they were really like dismissive and mean about it too on top of it. And people complained en masse in the comments about it, which they should have, because that's not a good job of the video you're doing or the explanations that you're making either. And that's just it too. Like, I feel like at least back then, that stuff got more rightfully like buried away and criticized and stuff. Where now it's just more common. I mean, I don't necessarily hear the "I don't know what this means" thing like too much anymore. But again, it might be a case of just because entries in iceberg charts have become so surface level basic that it doesn't really need to happen. And again, if I use the Super Mario 64 iceberg example, it'd be like if, I put just like random bits of like trivia and Easter eggs in the game throughout the whole entire chart that doesn't even go that deep. And at the bottom, I had Alice Real 2401. And it's like, okay, this is a bit confusingly arranged and underwhelming. And to give praisal as to why I thought charts were overall better when the trend first exploded is just that I saw a comment recently on Mishkasa's Mario 64 video, somebody who was returning to the video, and they praised the iceberg because of just how well arranged everything was in the entries in it and how it ended with every copy of Mario 64 is personalized. And they explained it how like every entry leads up to that one, and it all like ties together at the end. And it almost tells a story in a way in how other iceberg charts miss the point. And it's like, yeah, I do agree with that. I don't necessarily think you have to go the route of like tying it all together in one entry at the end and stuff like that, but it definitely enhances it a lot. And yeah, that's part of what makes it so good. It's not the only thing though, it's the choices in it and how it's arranged too, and the sincerity behind it that helps make it so good. And I feel like other iceberg charts that were made soon after that follow suit. It's like most of the ones that got popular right after that are ones that were made by like genuine, dedicated fans who were genuinely inspired by all of that, and they chose like the right stuff. They had good trivia. They had obscure things put on there, and it was interesting stuff. And there's stuff that was new to learn there. And I'll say too, for the Pikmin iceberg, I did learn new stuff on it too, which is always the best. But it was more present in charts from then. And again, there were sure ones, but again, they were much more likely to be dismissed and not get as much attention. And yeah, I'm just thinking of ones that were really good at that time when it first exploded. Like, there's a Team Fortress 2 one that I haven't looked at in a while just because I'm nowhere near as interested in Team Fortress 2 as I was in like the early 2010s, but it was a really good one, just full of good facts and stuff. And it was the one that ended with like how r/TF2 saved somebody from taking their own life. And yeah, like there's just so many good ones. Like the Pokemon one that Rob Renegade made and went over. That's a really good one. And there were some Zelda ones that were decent. I can't think of the specific one. But the Yu-Gi-Oh one's a really good one. That almost McFumbled and Yu-Gi-Oh everything was covered. And obviously the ones of my favorites you can see. And like on the other end back then, there was Ocarina of Time iceberg that Mishkasted like on a vanilla person, and there were issues in it just because it felt so much like less sincere, like it was just blatantly trying to copy the Mario 64 but without any like sincere inspiration or passion, and just copied stuff from the cutting room floor and made up shit with no grounds to it. Now, I'm all for making up like new ideas and theories, as well as like some obvious shit posts to iceberg charts if there's some ground to talking about it, and it's just not complete fucking bullshit. And like the obvious joke stuff, again, it's okay, it's funny to do it. I encourage having fun with these, and that's also fine if it's kept to a minimum and it's clearly just like one joke entry. And yeah, like an Animal Crossing iceberg that's really good at the very bottom. It had like the Wii U game at the very bottom, like that's very funny. And yeah, to also just criticize with that, again, like with that disappointing Ocarina of Time when like people were very vocal about it, like they weren't mean, but they were just like, this is really disappointing, and they voiced their concerns in the comments, which I feel like sadly might have been part of why he hasn't really done an iceberg since, but oh well. But yeah, that being said, I feel like that's why iceberg charts just felt better back then, and to why they're so much more underwhelming now. It's just that it's missing the passion, and like there's probably some rose tinted it to us, yes, like some nostalgia at this point, but again, I just feel like there was generally more of a renaissance back then. And there was also a really good Kirby one, if I can go on to like a sort of side point that was really good, and after that, I saw another video that was like the ultimate Kirby iceberg, but if you go and watch it, it's actually way fucking worse and weaker than like any other Kirby iceberg that has a video out there. But of course, it's one of the most views because it's the most loud and stupid about the ultimate, and I feel like there's a lot of icebergs that I feel like it's the ultimate, and it's just crap, and of course it gets the most attention though, and there's been a video in my recommend that I haven't watched yet that says like the ultimate Mario 64 iceberg, and it's the one with simple flips on the thumbnail. I'm sure it's fine. I don't want to prejudice, especially if it is just like the iceberg with more stuff on it. But the length is one part, but I just haven't felt the urge to watch it because like I'm just so hardwired to have low expectations. But if any of you have seen it and you think it's good and that I would like it, then do let me know because I want to believe that it is good. But I feel like that ties together what I feel like caused all these issues is that it's something that sadly just ruins a lot of things these days. Is that I feel like iceberg charts have just become like too overdone and mainstream enough to the point where it just has become this like bland, unemotional product that's just quickly made to quickly dish out something and get revenue. And then there's a bunch of ignorant people, morons is the better word than people from like the trending tab who see it and they're like, oh boy, and they eat it up and throw their money at it, and they're just completely ignorant to what came before or how there used to be better stuff. The Pokemon games from franchise now. And, like, unfortunately, that's just how a lot of fucking shit ends up being now, or they'll realize that there's, like, stuff on there that's maybe okay, but somebody already did this years ago, and it's become common knowledge forever, like, nostalgia viewers. But yeah, that's a sad point. But to end on a positive note, there are some recent icebergs that I've really liked. I mean, recent, it's somehow already been a fucking year since these were made, but there's one really good one called This Movie Should Not Exist, and when I first saw it, I was like, oh, this might not be good because it just looked like typical tuber shit, but no, it was really good. I learned a whole fucking lot of interesting shit from it, and one that's become my favorites, and you can find in my favorite playlist video, is the Mario Kart Wii Iceberg, the one covered by Seed Butter, and you can see who made it in the comments section, and they did a great fucking job with it. Just the entries are included, the way they're arranged, everything to it, and they did a phenomenal job, and Seed Butter did a fantastic job at covering it too. It's a great fucking time, and you should definitely go watch that video if you're interested in Mario Kart Wii. So yeah, that makes me hope more that there is still some good stuff, but I do still feel like the passion is being lost a lot. But yes, let me know what you all think. I believe that does about everything I wanted to say. So, remember,